Ladies and gentlemen, you haven't seen anything yet. You thought I was full of speculation. You thought coursing through these veins of mine was just pure speculation. Well, I don't know what happens here today, but it feels like it's pouring out of my ears because Asha Shwarma has left us with a tweet. And this tweet, while seemingly innocent, has given me a ton to speculate on.
Good morning, sir. Excuse me, I have a cold. Please, Todd, it's been a month. Can you show it to me now?
Good morning, Asha. Come closer. I will show it to you.
That's close enough, Todd. Pull it out. I need to see it. Oh, Todd, the scale and grandeur are incredible.
I can sell it easily. Todd, just tell me, how did you name it?
You can call him Dominion, young lady, but do not disclose the name to the players yet, and put that pistol away.
Thank you, sir. I will go post on Twitter now. Let me have another whiff of that Dior Sauvage elixir, please, sir.
Now, when it comes to Elder Scrolls 6, you also have to understand, I'm starving right now. We are starving right now. We don't get a lot here. You know, Bethesda's been a little cagey. But ever since Asha Shwarma seemingly came in and went like, look, time to communicate, and Bethesda, even though when I emailed them and asked them like, hey, is this actually what happened? They said, we decided to do this ourselves. Whatever the story may be, Bethesda's feeling a little bit more talkative about Elder Scrolls 6 in big and small ways. So, with all that in mind, what is this tweet that has sparked such grand speculation that I may go on for way too long about it? Let's not delay any further. Let's read. I was about to say and weep, but I think really cheer because it's at least something to talk about, for God's sake. So here's what Asha wrote. She said, live playthrough of the Elder Scrolls 6 asterisk this morning. The scale and grandeur are incredible. The story is even greater. Now,
she cannot know much about the story. Everything presented to her, but without any knowledge from prior games and lore to get references. Perhaps some cliff notes and generalized slop by Emil Pagliarolo. As for incredible grandeur and scale, again, she never played Skyrim, or Oblivion, or Morrowind, or Daggerfall. She has no clue what scope and scale those games have. It's like some normie getting into games for the first time in her 30s and being overwhelmed.
Look, I want to park for a moment. There's a lot to take in here, actually. Let's talk story for a moment. Asha has notoriously said she's not a big gamer. Doesn't mean she doesn't know a good story, but you know, I'm choosing to ignore this stuff because I also know people's opinions on Bethesda's storytelling very much differ. Like, I'm a big fan of Andreja in Starfield. Excellent character, but everyone seems to like hate everything about Starfield.
It should have been pronounced Andrea, but some illiterate American voice actor never heard of such Slavic name. Daughter of Vladimir that was turned into a black man in the last stretch of development of Starfield. Andrea was supposed to be that mysterious House Varun cultist girl, and a romance option for the player that chose that route, and to go worship the snake or demiurge or whatever. Microsoft fumbled Andrea, and she is a great example of just how boring and sterile everything has to be in corporate comedy-designed new Bethesda games. As a lover of irony, I find it amusing that McMAtty mentioned her, here, out of all the characters.
I feared the great serpent himself may have needed to avert his eyes at some of what went on last night.
So I think there are points in Bethesda games even where the writing is great or the characters are great. Like, I love Fallout 4's companion cast, and I feel like they kind of got wild disrespected at launch. But that's just me. So I'm not really focused on her saying, I had fun. What's she going to say? Live playthrough of the Elder Scrolls 6. It's ass. Look out. No. Scale and grandeur, these are all to be expected. Bethesda already told us through an interview with Kind of Funny Games that Elder Scrolls 6 is more of a classic style Bethesda experience. So you'd have to assume on-foot exploration. So what is the news? McMAtty, what? It's this right here, damn it. It's the asterisks. Because then Bethesda Game Studio responded and said, it was great being able to show you blank. Thank you for the kind words and a wonderful visit. What's going on here? Okay. Join me down quite possibly my most insane rabbit hole. Like, when I saw this, I went, oh, there's really nothing. But then I started to count up the characters. Let's do it together, shall we? Fuck me, dude. I can't. Hang on. My mic's in the way right now. Hang on. There's 8 asterisks here, okay? 8. Now, a lot of people have looked at this tweet with 8 asterisks and thought to themselves, setting? What could it possibly be? With all this in mind, I decided to dive deep down the rabbit hole. I can count, damn it. It's not 6, 7. I can count, damn it.
8 stars doesn't mean the word will have 8 characters. It was maybe used to throw off people from the real name, and that is Akavir.
Relax, chat. With all this in mind, I started to look into 8-character words within the Elder Scrolls universe. And I started to think to myself what this could be. Now, we've had predictions before, right? And what we have to consider with every Elder Scrolls game is the setting. Because, hey, Elder Scrolls 3, Morrowind. Elder Scrolls 5, Skyrim. It's setting-based, usually. However, Oblivion tells us a different story. Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion. It's not called Elder Scrolls 4, Cyrodiil. Or you think about Elder Scrolls Arena versus Elder Scrolls Daggerfall. Depending on what's happening here, they changed the subtitle a bit. So, a lot of people were thinking it would be Elder Scrolls 6, Hammerfell maybe, because that is assumed to be the setting of this game. And I'm a strong believer in that, and we'll break that down together here. But then, going to 8 characters, Redguard. However, Bethesda has already used that one before with the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, which is a game, if you don't know it, maybe it's best left that way. I don't know, man. I don't know. I saw this game and I was like, even me, like a Bethesda diehard, I'm good. So that in mind, it's been done before. So you got to do something else, right? And it doesn't have to be a setting. And so let me get into my theory here on what I think this 8-character word is and how it informs the entire story of Elder Scrolls 6.
When you ask a lady about something and she replies that it was great, it can have 2 meanings. It was truly great, and she doesn't want to share juicy, nasty details. The second option, and the relevant one here in this case, she doesn't know details, but it's in her interest to say it was great.
Join me as we look at the Great War. This is a book that you'll find in Skyrim. It was written by Kurt Coleman, and what it breaks down is the rise of the Thalmor, which led to a war with the Imperials. And this was a bloodied war. Essentially, what I'm going to do is give you the Spark Notes version of all of this. So as this war is building up, it leads to, as you'll see here in 4E174, the Imperial City getting taken over by the Thalmor. Obviously, this is not good. This is the home of the Imperials, and the Imperial City has been lost, right? And so the Thalmor are quite the force. Still are in the Elder Scrolls lore. Now, the Thalmor believe we have won this war. You know, it's over at this point. And that was written in an excerpt about the Battle of the Red Ring, which, by the way, absolutely sick name for the battle. When they thought Titus II was going to fold, like the Emperor is going to bend the knee out here and he's not going to fight anymore. We've just lost the Imperial City. They actually ambush the Aldmeri army and they take back the Imperial City here. Now, as shown in this breakdown here, they get a bit into, with the Battle of the Red Ring, how it actually resulted in not only them capturing Lord Nerfin, who they hung outside for upwards of 30 days, but the Imperial army specifically was in no shape to continue the war. The entire remaining Imperial force was gathered in Cyrodiil, exhausted and decimated by the Battle of the Red Ring. And it's also mentioned here that the main Aldmeri army in Cyrodiil was completely destroyed. So both sides had just sustained significant losses, right? And this is all what I think is a setup for what we're going to lead into with Elder Scrolls 6, but not really involving the Imperials, because one side that was helping the Imperials fight a war on a different front were the Redguards, and that was in Hammerfell. And so when both sides suffered these losses in the Battle of the Red Ring, this led to the White Gold Concordat. Now, the White Gold Concordat, think of it like a peace treaty, but it had very harsh terms on it. Specific terms that I think are what set up the political tension for an Elder Scrolls 6, right? So here are the terms. They were harsh, but Titus II believed that it was necessary to secure peace and give the Empire a chance to regain its strength. The 2 most controversial terms of the Concordat were the banning of the worship of Talos and the cession of a large section of southern Hammerfell, most of what was already occupied by Aldmeri forces. But of course, this is the rightful land of the Redguard. Like, what are you talking about? You're giving up our land. Critics have pointed out The Concordat is almost identical to the ultimatum the Emperor rejected 5 years earlier. However, there is a great difference between agreeing to such terms under the mere threat of war and agreeing to them at the end of a long and destructive war. No part of the Empire would have accepted these terms in 4E 171, dictated by the Thalmor at Sword's Point. Titus II would have faced civil war. By 4E 175, most of the Empire welcomed peace at almost any price, right? So, Empire's getting out scot-free. Thalmor can stop losing soldiers as well. Everyone's good, except Hammerfell. So what's going on with them? Well, the epilogue in all of this covers it pretty extensively. They write, Hammerfell, however, refused to accept the White Gold Concordat, being unwilling to concede defeat and the loss of so much of their territory. Titus II was forced to officially renounce Hammerfell as an imperial province in order to preserve the hard-won peace treaty. So basically, they caved. The Redguards, understandably, looked at this as a betrayal. In this, the Thalmor certainly achieved one of their long-term goals by sowing lasting bitterness between Hammerfell and the Empire. So we see growing political tension in more ways than one. In the end, the heroic Redguards fought the Aldmeri Dominion to a standstill, although the war lasted for 5 more years and left southern Hammerfell devastated. The Redguards say that this proves that the White Gold Concordat was unnecessary, as in the fighting continued, so what did it really accomplish? And that if Titus II had kept the nerve, the Aldmeri could have been truly defeated by the combined forces of Hammerfell and the rest of the Empire. So, they got more powerful. We could have beat them. We didn't stop them. Now they truly have everything they need. And they're taking our land. The truth of that assertion can, of course, never be known, but the Redguards should not forget the great sacrifice of Imperial blood, Breton, Nord, Cyrodiilic, at the Battle of the Red Ring that weakened the Dominion enough to allow the eventual Second Treaty of Stros-M'Kai in 4th Era 180 and the withdrawal of the Aldmeri forces from Hammerfell. Concluding here in this book that you can find in Skyrim, there can be no doubt that the current peace cannot last forever. The Thalmor take the long view, as it is proved by the sequence of events leading up to the Great War. All those who value freedom over tyranny can only hope that before it is too late, Hammerfell and the Empire will be reconciled and stand united against the Thalmor threat. Otherwise, any hope to stem the tide of the Thalmor rule all over Tamriel is dimmed.
Kurt Kuhlman, the longtime Elder Scrolls lore master, has revealed why he left Bethesda in 2023 after more than 20 years. With hundreds of developers across multiple studios making Starfield, communication sometimes broke down, and developers felt disconnected from senior management, Kuhlman said. But there's another reason, and it's linked to a promise Todd Howard made to him about the Elder Scrolls 6. A promise that Todd never fulfilled. Kuhlman was waiting like 11 years to be the lead on the Elder Scrolls 6. So everything MrMAtty here was dreaming about will not happen. Because the man behind that lore, and that was supposed to be the project lead to implement that, is gone.
So I find this to be a very perfect setup for Elder Scrolls 6, right? Here is this looming threat. It's the Thalmor army. You have this broken peace between all of these different sides. But obviously, you want to fight for freedom in Tamriel. But we're still working on this 8-character word, right? But you needed to understand some of the underpinning of the lore, where the Thalmor's in this, the Imperials are in this, and the Redguard in this. Now, you take Redguard off the table because you can't, I think, do that a second time. At least I don't think that would make a lot of sense for Bethesda. I'm thinking SEO. I'm thinking looking it up. Oh, this is Elder Scrolls. I don't know, man. Social media is showing people will fall for that and be like, oh, this is Elder Scrolls Redguard. And then you got the Thalmor. So the 8-letter word. What is the 8-letter word? My prediction is when Asha Shwarma was posting this and Bethesda was responding with this, let's say that they were being accurate with the game. I think it is Aldmeris. I think this is it. Elder Scrolls 6 Aldmeris. For those who don't know, and I was reading about it today. Aldmeris, also known as the Isle of Aldmeris, the Island of Start, Lost Aldmeris, Old Aldmeris, or Old Elnofi, is the mythical lost continent from which the Mer are said to have originated. The Mer, by the way, for those who don't know, are the elves. The term Aldmeris also refers to the language spoken by the Aldmer. Virtually nothing is known about the elven homeland, its location, its environment, its politics, its religion, and even its existence are the stuff of conjecture. By some accounts, Aldmeris may have been located somewhere in the South Eltharic Ocean. According to Aldmeri epic poetry, when the ancients sailed to the Somerset Isles and landed at the northern tip of Oregon, they lost the means to navigate back to Aldmeris, but had reason to believe their homeland lay in one of 3 different directions: south, northwest, or northeast. Now, follow me down speculation avenue a little bit more. A lot of us have really thought about this idea. There's High Rock and there's Hammerfell. We thought because of that there would be boats in Elder Scrolls 6 Hammerfell. There's been a lot of, quote, leaks. None of them from like your usual sources, but a lot of Starfield leaks happened this same way, where like these 4chan level leaks ended up being pretty true, where Elder Scrolls 6 could have boat riding. And I'm thinking about this a little bit more where, sailing the sea, trying to find the Isle of Aldmeris. I think ultimately what this is going to have to do with is the elves, the Lost Continent, and honestly them just trying to find their place in this world, and also like the superior elven rule, a way to take them down. I think this is what they're going to get into, because there are parts of the lore of Elder Scrolls that you'd think for how many games we've had elves that this would be something they've already explored, but they really haven't. And so I feel like, especially because there's also touches of racism within the way elves are treated and how they treat each other, that the heightened political tension can really match that well from a thematic point of view if Bethesda chooses to write it very well here.
Employees left at Bethesda do not have the capacity to write a nuanced story involving racial tensions or any attempt at intricate problems and conflicts with race as one of the pillars, like in Morrowind. Back in time 25 years, when religious, racial, class, etc., strife was explored and gave both philosophical questions and answers on the topic, especially not in Redguard province or considering current-day Microsoft policies.
There's a lot more lore here when it comes to Aldmeris that is documented here on this Elder Scrolls lore Bible. There's the mythology of it. There's the history of it. They say in more pragmatic records, the continent faced an unspecified threat or crisis, causing the Aldmer to leave in search of a new home across the seas. The Aldmeri refugees then became lost in a storm and eventually landed in Tamriel at 9 Prow Landing on the island of Oradon in the Somerset Isles. These Aldmer were the ancients, the ancestors of modern-day Altmer, and the Aelids also trace their roots to Aldmeris, right? When we think of the Aeliad ruins that you would find in Oblivion, like there's so much mystery around this stuff. The same way like the Dwemer ruins are surrounded with a ton of mystery in Skyrim as well. So I feel like this is something that they could actually try to answer with this game. And so that's what brought me, the 8 characters really did bring me down this rabbit hole of like, okay, what are 8 character keywords in Elder Scrolls? And there's Redguard, but I'm like, Aldmeris makes sense, dude. Like, I think they can't repeat Redguard. So I think Aldmeris makes sense. And when you start to see the underpinning of the Great War lore, and then you start to see like how that connects to the Thalmor and how the Thalmor don't really know their origins. Like, this could be a story about the elves more than the Redguard. Like, there is obviously going to be, I think if at the very least, I'm correct about the Great War book kind of setting up the story for Elder Scrolls 6 and Hammerfell. It's no doubt going to be a story a little bit similar in vibe to what you saw in Skyrim. Like, there's a rebellion ongoing. The Thalmor are creeping their expansion beyond the southern border of Hammerfell. And so I could see battles happening there. This is why one of my big predictions with Elder Scrolls 6 really went into the idea of big battles. I think Elder Scrolls Online tried to do that with PvP, but I think one thing that would be really cool to see Bethesda use next-gen tech for is like truly big battles. Like, there were the Stormcloaks and the Imperials fighting one another in or the Nordstar, whatever. They were fighting each other in Skyrim, and they had like 5-on-5 fights, but they were wars, you know, and they didn't really capture the feeling of a civil war in Skyrim that well. So I think that Elder Scrolls 6 capturing true war between the rebellion in Hammerfell as well as the Thalmor, fighting back, reuniting with the Imperials, storming them, and then learning more about like the actual history of the elves. That is why I think it is called Elder Scrolls 6 Aldmeris. I think that would be a sick name, and I think it would be such cool source material to dive into. This was just me like skimming around. You know, as I've talked about before, I should have led with this. I'm not an Elder Scrolls lore guru. I wouldn't call myself either a Fallout lore guru, but I definitely know that more like immediately, where Elder Scrolls requires this more deeper methodical look because there's eras and eras and eras of lore, and so much of it is word of mouth lore. So it's not like Fallout where there's like terminal entries like this happened, but rather Elder Scrolls where characters talk and stories are passed down and there's no official way of recording that, where it changes over time. But one thing is consistent. No one knows truly where the elves originated from, like literally where on the globe. And so I feel there's something there. So look, man, I think this is why I said, like, I think the speculation is insane, but I do think there's something there to pick at. I think personally that's what I go with. Elder Scrolls 6 Aldmeris. So thank you for listening to my batshit insane speculation. Keep in mind as well, though, one bit of additional context we learned last year that is worth covering here. I mentioned with the Great War book, this was written by, highlighted here, Kirk Coleman. Kirk Coleman has left Bethesda Game Studios. This is important context, not because, oh, his brain isn't here to shape this, but he was promised originally Elder Scrolls 6 after Fallout 4. And as we know, with the way things went, you know, Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, Fallout 4, 76, Starfield, now finally Elder Scrolls 6. So he left a while ago. And part of the reason he left was because of this. He said Todd promised him ES6, and then obviously it was going to be over a decade before they got to that. So he just moved on. With all of that in mind, it is possible that Kurt set up this story that I just read here for his Elder Scrolls 6, which he has talked about a little bit before. But he set it up for his Elder Scrolls 6, and Bethesda's going to go in a different direction with their Elder Scrolls 6. So we'll see, but definitely worthwhile context in who wrote this. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that is my speculation on what exactly Elder Scrolls 6 could be. And yes, last thing I want to throw in here, thank you, Souls Jimbo, for this chat here, because I have it here in my document. I wrote, because it's about the Thalmor, I put an arrow. I said Aldmeris or Dominion. Like Elder Scrolls 6 Dominion, I think would be a sick one. And that might read a little bit better. Like, if you're thinking about Elder Scrolls 6 being kind of like easy to read for casuals, would you buy Elder Scrolls 6 Aldmeris or would you buy Elder Scrolls 6 Dominion? Because it's all about the Aldmeri Dominion still. So I like Dominion as well. I think it's something with elven implications. I'm going to go with either Dominion sounds a little bit more plausible because I think Elder Scrolls 6 Dominion, Elder Scrolls 6 Aldmeris. I think Dominion rolls off the tongue a little bit better. I can go with that. That works as sort of like a 1B to my 1A. So
seen any elves? 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 Seen any elves?